On July 23rd, 2026, 14 people sat in a room and voted on whether you should be allowed to buy a drug that nobody can fully describe. Not nobody knows if it works. Nobody can agree on what it is. The FDA's own scientists spent the day arguing against it. The panel voted yes anyway, 8-6. This is the story of peptides, what they actually do, what the research actually shows, and what is actually inside the vial. Fitness under the microscope? Let's start with the word itself because it is doing a lot of work in marketing. A peptide is a short chain of amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. Link a few together and you have a peptide. Link hundreds together and you have a protein. That is the entire definition. It is a size category. Nothing more. Insulin is a peptide. It has kept people alive since the 1920s. Ozempic is a peptide. An unmarked vial shipped from an overseas website is also a peptide. All three are peptides. They have almost nothing else in common. So when someone says, "I'm on peptides," that sentence carries about as much information as "I'm on molecules." The word is not the problem. The problem is that the word is used to make very different things sound like the same thing. There are three kinds of peptide on the market. They are not close to equal. Shelf 1. Approved peptide drugs. As of 2026, more than 80 peptide drugs hold full FDA approval. Insulin. Semaglutide, which you know as Ozempic and Wegovy. Tirzepatide. Tesamorelin. These went through clinical trials. Their risks are documented. When someone points at Ozempic and says, "See, peptides work," this is what they are pointing at. And they are right about these. Shelf 2. Compounded peptides. These are not approved drugs. A licensed pharmacy prepares them for one patient against one prescription. There is a real pharmacist and a real doctor in the loop, but nobody has proven the compound does what it claims. Shelf 3. The gray market. Sold online labeled for research use only, not for human consumption. That label is not a warning. It is a legal shield. It is how a seller avoids regulation and hands every bit of the risk to you. Almost every peptide you have seen in a fitness video lives on Shelf 3. BPC 157, the most talked about recovery peptide in the world. As of mid-2026, there is not one completed, published, randomized controlled trial in humans for muscle or tendon repair. Not one. Every healing result you have heard about comes from animal studies, mostly rats. A rat is not a small version of you. Most drugs that work in rats fail in humans. That is the normal outcome, not the exception. TB 500, same picture. CJC 1295 and Ipamorelin. This pair is often called the best studied combination in humans. And that is true. The study people point to is a dose-finding trial from 1998. It measured whether the compound raises growth hormone. It did. It did not measure whether you get bigger or leaner or heal faster. Raises a hormone and produces a result are two different claims. The cardiologist and researcher Eric Topol summed up the whole field bluntly. There are no randomized human trials showing that any of these peptides delivered the benefits being advertised. The animal data is genuinely interesting. That is not the same as proof. Here's the part almost every peptide video skips. Forget for a moment whether the compound works. Ask a simpler question. Is the compound even in the bottle? Researchers analyzed 6,441 gray market peptide samples across 14 different compounds. Depending on which quality standard you apply, between 42 and 71% failed basic quality criteria. 15% carried measurable endotoxin contamination. The specifics are worse. Gray market semaglutide, sold with labels claiming 99% purity, tested between 7 and 14%. Every single sample tested positive for endotoxins. A Belgian forensic analysis of seized counterfeit peptides found purity ranging from 5% to 75%. 26% contained arsenic or lead above pharmaceutical safety limits. 100% contained residue from an industrial solvent. In a separate analysis of peptides bought online, 30% had the wrong amino acid sequence entirely. Not impure. Not the right molecule at all. You are not injecting BPC 157. You are injecting whatever arrived in the post. So, what are the side effects? This is where the honest answer is uncomfortable, and it is the reason so many videos get this wrong. For most gray market peptides, we cannot give you a side effect profile, not because they are safe, because nobody has run the trials that would produce one. A side effect list comes from thousands of monitored patients tracked over years. That work has not been done here. An empty risk column does not mean low risk. It means nobody looked. What we can talk about is contamination. Endotoxins are the main threat. They are bacterial byproducts. They survive manufacturing even when the bacteria themselves are killed. Injected, they cause fever and inflammation, and at high enough doses, septic shock. And here's the trick that catches almost everyone. A seller shows you a certificate of analysis. 99% pure. That test cannot detect endotoxins at all. It cannot tell you what the other 1% is. A vial can be 99% pure and still put you in hospital. Purity testing and safety testing are not the same test. Most buyers have never been told the difference. Which brings us back to that room on July 23rd. 14 people, 7 peptides on the agenda. The FDA's own scientists presented first and recommended against all 7. Their core objection was not that the compounds are dangerous, it was stranger than that. They said there is no universally accepted chemical formula for these substances. The agency could not evaluate them because it could not establish what they are. The panel voted to recommend 6 of the 7 anyway. BPC 157 passed 8-6. MOTSC passed 7-5. Only 1 was rejected. Time reported that the yes votes came largely from members who represent or advise telehealth companies. Companies that sell peptides. To be fair to them, several said their reasoning was harm reduction. If people are going to take these regardless, a pharmacy is safer than a website. That is a legitimate argument, and it deserves to be heard. But notice what the vote is not. It is not approval. It is not evidence that anything works. The FDA still has to write a rule, take public comment, and finalize it. A recommendation is not a result. So where does this leave you? Peptides are not a scam. Semaglutide is one of the most effective drugs of the decade, and it is a peptide. But peptide is a category, not a promise. On one shelf sits medicine tested on thousands of people. On another sits an unmarked vial with a 30% chance of holding the wrong molecule. The marketing wants you to see one shelf. Now you can see both. This has been fitness under the microscope.